These men, including Daniel ESTREMERA, were vicious, mean, and scary. Holding a gun, Mr. ESTREMERA and his buddies tied up my scared, helpless father. Then my mother was tied up, and then they tied up my little, profoundly deaf sister. She was only 15. He and his gang ransacked the house, tore apart closets, drawers, cabinets, looking for money. Money. They even cut the phone lines, as I understand it. My family was sure they were going to be killed. He figured finding a few bucks was worth terrorizing and threatening to kill a family. This horror continued for, I'm told, an hour and a half until the doorbell rang. You see, they had locked the doors. They locked my family in. When the door was open, the daughter, another sister, a beautiful, smart, popular, caring 16-year-old teenager, walked into the house after having doing some fun with some friends, and looked down the hall where she saw one man standing with a shotgun. She thought everyone had been killed. She didn't know where anyone was, but the worst hadn't happened yet. She ran to the kitchen to hide. They found her, took her from the kitchen, and forced her into the bedroom, happened to be my bedroom, next to where my tied-up parents, the bedroom adjacent to where my tied-up parents and my sister were held. They demanded she take off her clothes, and then they tied her hands. One man would hold the gun on my parents while ESTREMERA and the others, one after the other, took turns in violent her.
Before I begin, I want to make something absolutely clear. My words of support for Danny are not meant to minimize or disregard the harm that he caused to any of his victims or the ripple effect that was caused by his crimes. I know what he did when he was 19 years old. He was a kid, and I call him a kid because that's what the scientific research and our own legislature tell us, that at 19 years old, the human brain is still very much under construction.
And that's why we are here today, even though he was sentenced to 1,000 years in prison, because the crime you just heard was just one of the many crimes that this man has in his jacket. As you will hear as this hearing goes, he was a career criminal. He's actually locked up for felony murder. This crime that they're talking about is not even the reason that we are here today. But sitting next to him is an attorney that will put his needs and wants before the victims, before the public. And she is doing it riding on the high horse of legislation passed in the state of Connecticut recently that says anyone under the age of 21, correct, not 18, but 21, is just a child. Their brains haven't fully developed. Surely they should get paroled. Now, we are, at least I am, frankly, sick and tired of those who sit on their high horse and try to virtue signal to the world that these monsters should get paroled. And for anybody who says, Mandoo, where is your empathy for this man who's been locked up for 45 years? And to you, I say, where is the empathy for the victims? To even imagine living in a world knowing that you are tied and having a gun pointed at you while your daughter is in the other room with those monsters. Is there any amount of time that should allow you to get paroled? Why is it that you put the empathy of this monster before those of the victims? Now let's jump into an Act 23 169 hearing, one that puts the emphasis on the monster, and let's see if they will grant parole. And with that, let's jump in.
Mr. ESTREMERA, can you please state your name and inmate number for the record?
Yes, Daniel ESTREMERA, 78169.
Thank you. This is a public hearing in accordance to Chapter 14, Freedom of Information Act, Connecticut General Statute 1-200, which applies to this procedure. If you have any questions concerning the above, please bring your questions to the attention of the panel at this time. Again, this is a public hearing. Mr. ESTREMERA, do you have any questions?
No, ma'am.
And are you willing to proceed with the hearing at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So as previously indicated, this is a Public Act 23-169 hearing. It's being conducted in consideration of a parole application for Daniel ESTREMERA, inmate number 078169. Mr. ESTREMERA is serving a sentence of 30 years to life for murder, robbery in the first degree, burglary in the first degree, sexual assault in the first degree, and escape in the first degree. There is victim input in this case. There's also an offender accountability plan in place that has been reviewed and shows he has completed programming such as problem sexual behavior treatment tracks 1 and 2, anger management, thinking for a change, intensive aftercare, voices, and alternatives to violence. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score on the RT falls in the moderate range risk for recidivism. And also utilizing the static 99R as the offender's overall score for sexual offenders falls within the local range. Mr. ESTREMERA, this is now your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole, and you may begin.
Good morning. Bear with me, please. I'm extremely nervous, so I'm going to need to read the statement. My name is Daniel ESTREMERA. I will be 65 years old in November 11th. I have been in prison for 37 years. Before I talk to you about how I've grown since my teenage years, I want to start by outlining why I am here and to apologize to my victims. I appreciate that my words will ring hollow to them, which is completely understandable and expected. I am fully aware that there's nothing that I can say that will change that. They can change what I've done to them and how I destroyed their lives, but I'll never stop trying to make amends. On December 27, 1979, I participated in a crime that forever shattered the Ashline family. That night, my co-defendant Papo and myself were riding around drinking and getting high. We headed to Elizabeth Park. At the entrance of the park, we saw a big colored freezer truck. We decided to check it out, and we saw what we believed to be a drug deal. Without thinking, Papo and I decided to rob the men in the truck of what we believed to be drugs. We were both armed with guns. Papo went to the driver's side, and I went to the passenger side. Papo got there first, opened the door, and pulled out the driver, throwing him to the ground. I grabbed the truck's passenger side railing with my left hand and pulled myself up to the cab. When I pulled myself up, I saw Mr. Ashline and the other passenger in the truck lock the door. I then went around to the front of the truck, and when I got to the driver's open side door, I saw Mr. Ashline and the other passenger pressed up against the truck's door. I initially thought I could just jump up into the truck and grab the bag of drugs and jump back out. But in order to get into the truck, because it was so high off the ground, I was going to need to grab onto the steering wheel in order to boost myself up into the truck. That's when I handed my gun to Papo. I then jumped up into the truck cabin, and as I tried to grab the bag, Mr. Ashline slapped my hand away. When I went for the bag the second time, Mr. Ashline lunged at me. I did not expect any other men to fight back. I jumped out of the truck backwards and fell onto the ground. When I looked up, Mr. Ashline was jumping out the truck after me. As I turned to run, Papo fired a shot into the ground in the direction of Mr. Ashline. But Mr. Ashline courageously kept coming. I started to run away. Papo then shot Mr. Ashline several more times before turning and running himself. Just before I entered into the woods, I turned around to see Mr. Ashline standing behind the truck and then falling to the ground. I then ran off. I am deeply sorry for my actions as all of my inactions that night. If I had not decided to participate in the robbery, Papo probably would not have done it alone, and Mr. Ashline would still be alive. But the reality is that he died because we wanted to get high. Nothing could be more senseless and unnecessary, and I will never be able to forgive myself for depriving that young man of a life and for robbing his family of his continued love and support. The depth of despair I feel for being responsible for another person's murder is surpassed only by the despair felt by the Ashline family of missing their Philip. Concerning my sexual assault, I first want to say that I know that I cannot say my victim's name on the record, but I want her to know that if she is listening, that I mean no disrespect by referring to her as my victim rather than by her name. I am aware that nothing I can say will ever take away the pain I caused on the night of January 30, 1980, and every night thereafter, and for how I re-victimized my victim at my sentencing by denying my conduct. On that terrible night, I terrorized her and her family, stole their peace, and shattered their sense of safety. On January 30th, I was picked up by Papo and a friend. We drove around for a while, drinking and getting high, before Papo suggested ripping off a farmer that he used to work for. On our way there, I was told by Papo to stay in the car as a lookout, while he and his friend went to rob the farmer. When that took far longer than I felt it should have, I got nervous and went inside to see what was the matter. When I walked inside the house, I saw the father, mother, and a young daughter all tied up in the living room. I asked Papo if they had found the money, and he said no. For some reason, I thought the money could be in the basement, so I took the father to the basement to see if the money was down there. We were down there for a while, and when I came up, I saw that they had moved the mother and a small daughter to the parents' bedroom. I took the father in the bedroom and secured him there. When I came out of the bedroom, I saw Papo standing by one of the other bedrooms. To my surprise, another daughter had arrived home while I was in the basement. I was shocked to find that both Papo and his friend were in the process of raping her. I obviously did nothing to stop it, and I did not leave. When Papo's friend came out of the room, Papo looked at me and said something to the effect of, "It's your turn, man." At that point, I can't really say what went through my head, but I did it. Whether out of some sense of pressure to fit in with the guys, or to be perceived as a real man, or something else altogether. The simple fact is that I raped her too, for which I am both sorry and regretful. And I fully expect that neither she nor I will ever escape that. Time may have dimmed my recollection of that night some, but I am as certain as I can be that it remains crystal clear in her mind, as traumatic events often do. Thinking about that night makes me physically ill. I cannot reconcile the actions of that boy with who I am now. Of course, I knew better. Nothing in my background can excuse the violence I carried out on that young girl. And she is never going to be the same carefree spirit that walked in the door of her home that night because of me. I think about this a lot, and I think about what I would do if someone violated one of my loved ones in this way. I would be inconsolable and filled with vengeance, and there certainly would be no forgiveness. So I know my victim cannot forgive me. I cannot forgive me, but I still want her to know the shame and disgust that I feel for having been capable of such an act. I am so sorry for stealing her youth, her spirit, and her innocence. I am also aware that my victimization of these families did not end with my crimes. I know that justice was stolen from them when I escaped custody, and I'm beyond sorry for that as well. After my arrest for these crimes, my attorney told me I would never see the light of day if I was found guilty. I began to contemplate what that would mean for me if I was locked up with my co-defendant, Papo, who I wrote a statement against implicating him in these crimes. I was afraid for my life, and I did not want to spend the rest of my life behind bars. I escaped and ran to Puerto Rico, where I met my grandfather for the first time and saw for the first time a strong male role model who wanted only to guide me and lead me into a morally upright and generally good life. I worked for the first time, and I was not only productive, but happy in a simple way. I later moved to Florida and then to California, where I built my newfound work ethic. I began to see, with no drugs or alcohol to cloud my perception, the suffering of others, and to understand and have compassion for others. My eyes were open for the first time to the possibilities of and the desire for a life that was pure and clean. But I felt I had this cloud hanging over me, which was justice for those vile things I did. I felt a profound sense of despair, even as I experienced how life should be. And I felt I would never be able to have that healthy, wholesome life for myself. I knew I would eventually be caught, and when I finally was, I was actually a relief for me. There was no life for me until I was brought to justice for the lives I shattered. It was not easy. Prison is not meant to be easy, but I do think it saved my life and gave me an opportunity to start over and learn from my mistakes. For the past 37 years, I've been consistent in everything that I've done. I have stayed focused with one goal in mind, and that is to be the best version of myself. Trusted, kind, caring, thoughtful friend and family member. I knew that I could not take back what I had done to my victims. The only thing I could do with my time is become the man who never would have done these things in the first place. To do this, I had to tear down the walls and destroy my foundation and build a new one in order to become this new person. From 1988 to present, I completed some 20 to 25 programs, including religious studies, educational classes, work training, jobs, institutional rehabilitation groups, and I have received numerous certificates and awards. As you know, I came to prison in 1988 illiterate. Today, I have my associate degree in business administration, and I am one class away from obtaining a second degree in general studies. I have also completed 2 vocational programs in graphic arts communication and building maintenance. I am proud of these accomplishments. It helps me to measure how far I've come from that illiterate boy who terrorized his community. In the programs I have taken, especially the sex offender treatment program, Voices and Alternative to Violence, I was given a glimpse into the reality of life of victims of crime. Collectively, these programs allow me to view the experience of crime victims from their perspective and the ongoing struggles that they endure to put their lives back together after being victimized. I applied what I learned from these programs to my own life and what I had done. But it wasn't until my parole hearing in 2015 that I heard from my victim directly. The things they said really opened my eyes to the terrible magnitude of my crimes. That is when those pieces of those programs clicked into place for me. For the first time, I saw the complete link between me, my crimes, and my victims, and the crystal clarity of it all rocked me to the core. I felt again, as I always do, in thinking about my crimes, such shame, disgust, guilt, and above all, deep regret and remorse that I have done these things. I understand perfectly why I needed to be punished for my actions, and this is why I push myself so hard to change and grow. I am no longer that selfish and destructive kid I was, not because I don't want any more punishment for it, but rather because I don't want to be the source of anybody else's pain and suffering. Over the years, I've found over the years, I found that mentoring others and quietly planting and quietly planting the seeds of change in them has helped me to experience some positivity behind bars. It has allowed me to give back to the community and some effort to make amends. If this board decides to grant me parole, my goal is to continue mentoring younger people to help them avoid the path I took. I also want to care for my elderly mother, who is now 83 years old. If my parole is granted, my desire would be to transfer my parole to Puerto Rico, where she lives. I have a lot of support from friends and family, both here in Connecticut and in Puerto Rico, who are anxious to help me get settled and start my life over. Thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate your hearing me out, and I am happy to answer any questions that you have of me.
Okay, thank you for your statement, Mr. ESTREMERA. Much of that information we reviewed in your file when preparing for today. We looked at your police reports, the PSI, sentencing transcript, all of your previous hearing information, support letters, records from the Department of Correction to include program and education, as well as you had one disciplinary report in all these years. We reviewed support letters, evaluations, Dr. Pierre and Dr. Hall's reports, the memorandum from your attorney, and the information from your interview with our parole officer. So we're very familiar with your case. We do have questions for you. When we're done with our questions, the Office of Victim Services will facilitate input from the victims, and then your attorney and the state's attorney will have opportunities to speak. We'll deliberate and we'll give you our decision here today. Okay?
Thank you.
All right. So you did speak about the felony murder, the sex assault, and the escape first. Was there any reason why you didn't mention the burglary first and robbery first?
No.
You already served those sentences.
I already served those sentences.
Okay, so is that why you intentionally didn't speak on those cases? Because
That's right.
burglary first was part of, I mean, you know, you committed this sex assault while you're committing the burglary first, but okay, all right. I understand your attorney's explanation, although I'd rather hear from you.
So I was convicted of, I wasn't sure if that had anything to do with another crime that I had committed where I stole some marijuana. So that's probably why I didn't mention it.
Okay.
I thought that by mentioning the sexual assault that it was all included in that particular crime.
Okay.
In my mind, that's what I thought.
Okay, but in my mind, you terrorized that entire family, not just
Absolutely.
the sexual assault victim.
No, absolutely, I did. And I take
And I'm not
responsibility.
sure I would describe your robbery first as you stealing a little marijuana either.
Oh, no. That was in a separate crime that I committed.
Okay.
That wasn't this particular crime here.
Okay. All right. So you yourself alluded to the fact that you did not accept responsibility in court. I did, and I made note of that in my transcript. I mean, you were adamant that you had absolutely nothing to do with the sexual assault. Why?
At the time, I was in denial. I just couldn't bring myself to accept the fact that I committed such a horrendous crime. The level of shame and embarrassment that I was feeling when I was sentenced was just overwhelming. I mean, the courtroom was packed. There was people everywhere, and I was in total denial. I just couldn't bring myself to admit to having committed such a horrendous crime, and it.
Okay. So at what point did you come out of that denial and accept responsibility?
Absolutely, I did.
No, I'm asking you, at what point did that happen?
Oh, well, when I was taking my sex offender program, that gave me an opportunity to listen to other people's crimes, and it gave me an opportunity to reflect and think about what I had done to this young lady. And that's when I started coming around to actually accepting the fact that, understanding the damage that I had done. And it just
So it took you 26 years to get to that point?
No, it's such a hard thing it's just a hard it's such a hard thing to accept. For me, it's just such a hard thing to come to terms with, that I did such a terrible thing.
Yeah,
It's
I understand
not,
what you're saying.
it's not easy, to accept something like that. It's, that I was capable of doing that. It's just so hard to come to
Yeah.
terms with that.
Mhm.
But I accept it. I accept the fact that I committed that crime. I raped that young lady. I shattered her life, and I've come to terms with that, and I accept it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So you started with the felony murder, and I understand you say you were there, you participated, but you were not the shooter. Your co-defendant, Nieves Rodriguez, whatever his name is, I'm not sure what his legal name is, but he has a few, that he was the shooter. He had 2 guns. One of them was your gun, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But then he took your gun and shot and killed the victim. So how is it that you end up with the felony murder and he does not?
Well, I ended up with the felony murder because I escaped. Yeah, he was charged with that felony murder. But the thing was that because I escaped, and I had signed a statement against him, implicating him in that crime, he was, they dropped the charges against him because I had escaped. For that reason.
That doesn't make sense.
How do I explain that?
All right. Well, no, listen, if you want to take a recess to speak, you can. But Attorney Walker, this isn't your parole hearing. If you want to take a recess to discuss it further, you can. You're going to have an opportunity to speak later.
It's in the sentencing transcript.
I read it. I read it. It just didn't make sense to me. Okay. All right. So why did you have a gun?
I stole that gun from the robbery that I did, and I don't remember what town that was.
Why did you have a gun with you that night, sir?
Ma'am,
I understand that you stole a gun, but why were you carrying a gun with you? Why did you need a gun?
Because of the lifestyle that I was living at that time. That's why I had the gun. I was living a terrible lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. So you were regularly robbing people for money?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. And I appreciate you being honest, and that's what we want. We need to understand. So at what point, sir, after your incarceration, did you start to make a change in your thinking and behaviors?
Well, I believe that I started making a change when I escaped and I went to Puerto Rico and I met my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, for the first time. I believe that that's when the change started in my life. Before that, I really had no structure in my life. I lived in a dysfunctional family. All I ever knew was nothing but dysfunction. I had no moral values. I had no discipline. I was left to my own devices basically from the time that I could from the beginning, from the time that I could remember. So when I escaped and I went to Puerto Rico and met my maternal grandfather for the very first time, that's when I just saw a completely different world. You know, this is this was a man who only had a third grade education. He owned a farm. Everybody in the area where he lived, everybody respected him and looked up to him, and it just floored me. I didn't, you know, I couldn't believe that this man was my grandfather. And you know, he would sit me down and he would talk to me lovingly, and he would give me advice, and just working with him and watching him, you know, I just noticed everything that I had been missing in my whole life. And from that moment on, I knew that I had to change. I knew that, you know, that the way that I was living my life was just wrong.
Mhm.
And I needed to change. And he's what set me on that path of change. And then with my newfound sense of my newfound sense of responsibility, and I started working. I left Puerto Rico because I realized that me being there was putting my grandparents in danger, because in essence they were harboring a fugitive. So I left them and I went to live in Florida. And then in Florida, I finally got a job working at a pharmaceutical, working at as a janitor. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to work there that long because I was afraid that, you know, that the law might catch up to me, and I left to live in California. When I got to California, I worked at a couple of places. I worked at a mattress factory, and I had a couple of other, you know, marginal jobs and stuff like that until I finally landed a job working at a leather store as a salesman. And that newfound sense of responsibility that I got, and that, you know, surrounding myself with positive people, and just being around, you know, people that weren't involved in any types of crime, you know, life just started getting more easy for me, you know. You know, as far as.
So let me ask you a question. While you were on escape status and doing all of this, did anyone that you were spending time with know what you had done?
No, ma'am. No, they
So you were
didn't.
basically living a secret life.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing all of that with me. Did you apply for a sentence modification?
Yes, ma'am.
And when was that?
I believe that was in 98, 99,
Okay.
but nothing came of it because of my indeterminate sentence.
Yeah. What was the reason for what was the premise for the sentence modification?
Why I filed the sentence modification?
Yes.
I didn't know that I couldn't get one.
Why did you think you deserved one at that point?
Well, because of all the things that I was doing, all the positive things that I was doing in the DLC, with all the social programs that I was involved. I was involved with that activity committee. I was involved. I helped spearhead the prisoners outreach program.
But by that point, you hadn't even taken any of your programs.
No, when I filed the sentence modification,
Yeah.
yes, I'd taken a whole bunch of programs.
But you just said 98. You did the sex offender programs in 06 and 07. You did Voices, Thinking for a Change in 09, 11. Like most of them came later. But you thought after 10 years of incarceration, you had done enough to be deserving of a sentence modification? Yeah, I have them all in front of me.
Okay. In 1990, I did the humanitarian program, That's
We
a
know
religious
everything you
program.
did. You don't have to list them all. Did you understand my question?
You
So
asked
I'm
me,
just pointing out, much of your very important programming came after that. So I'm wondering if you truly believe that you deserve the sentence modification after 10 years of incarceration.
yes, ma'am, I
Okay.
believe that I did deserve that sentence modification.
Okay, and I guess I'll ask you this. What is a fair sentence for felony murder, burglary first, and sexual assault first? In your opinion, what is a fair sentence?
What I got was a fair sentence. The sentence
you
that I
think-
was given,
So, okay. So, I mean, it's basically life.
yes, ma'am.
You think that's a fair sentence?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your honesty. And I'm sure many people would agree with you. You know, that these are difficult offenses. I mean, you know, it's hard to read. I can't imagine having to live through this. So I definitely, I appreciate that. Now, you started talking about a prison outreach program. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, the Prisoners Outreach Program was spearheaded by myself and 4 more other inmates while I was in the Enfield institution. And what we did is we would counsel young kids as to the what not to do, you know, about committing crimes and getting involved in gangs and using drugs, and we use our own personal experiences as an example to that, to show them what, you know, what can happen if they were to go down that road. You know, that this was, you know, that this is going to be the end result is, you know, being incarcerated for maybe the rest of their lives, or
Yeah.
or even worse.
How long did that program go on for?
We started the program and I believe it was like 1991, and the program continued until they closed the prison, I believe. I left there, so I don't know if the program continued or not.
So
But
how
I
long were
was-
you involved in the program?
From 1991 to 1999.
Okay, so for about 8 years.
Yes,
And how
ma'am.
often did you speak to people in the community?
We did that about 2 or 3 times a week.
Wow.
We-
Okay.
We would have alternative to violence groups would come up, community programs, Mikasa would come up. We would have different schools in the community would come up. So we worked with a lot of youth from the inner cities, mainly from the inner cities. We also had youth that would come in from the suburbs, and we would also counsel them with the same amount of passion and love that we did the ones from the inner city.
All right, you did receive excellent evaluations for school, work, your programs. We also read a lot of support letters from family, friends, inmates. There was some correctional staff, although those I think were older, but clearly there are people who speak highly of you.
Yes,
And
ma'am.
they see that you're a different person than the person who committed these crimes. So that's all good news. You've done all of the programs and you've stayed out of trouble. I mean, 1 ticket in 37 years is we don't see that, you know, so it is clear that you've tried, you know, and does your family see that? Do you talk to I know your son is incarcerated, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Do you have any contact with your other child?
My daughter, not as much as I would like to,
Okay.
not as much as I would want to.
Yeah, I mean, that must be tough.
Yes, it is, ma'am. because of the type of job that my daughter has, I understand that, you know, having her father in the situation that I'm in right now will probably not be good for her, you know. So
Yeah.
I stay away from her because of that reason.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't have love for each other. You know, I know she loves me dearly and I love her. It's just that, you know, the shame that I have to live with is something that unfortunately doesn't allow me to, you know, to reach out to her as much as I would want to,
Yeah.
because, you know, I just don't want her to be associated with, you know, have people know that I'm her father.
Right.
And the stigma that might have.
Yeah. All right. So I reviewed all of your prior hearings. Tell us what you've been doing or what you've done since your 2023 hearing.
Well, I basically keep myself busy. I try to mentor quietly. I mentor younger men that are in the system. I tutor them. I help tutor them. I do a lot of reading. I help them with letters. A lot of them don't know how to read, so I read their letters. I help them with, you know, with any way that I can. I have a table in the day room where I do artwork. I do you know, cards for family members and stuff like that, and I show them how to do drawings and how to put them together, how to, you know, how to coordinate the colors and whatnot. And you know, this is something that just, you know, it just gives my life purpose and it gives my life meaning.
All right.
And,
I have one last question for you, sir. At the
Yes,
time of
ma'am.
your offenses, would you say you were a leader or a follower?
Ma'am, I was definitely a follower. Absolutely a follower. My self-esteem was like, the best way that I can put it is I was broke. I was a broken human being. I had no direction. I had no discipline. I had no, you know, my life was, my life, I felt like it had no purpose. And, and I was basically a follower, you know, just following.
Okay. Yep. And I lied. I have another question. How did co-defendants?
Excuse me?
How did you know your co-defendant?
Oh, I met him on the street. I met him in the Frog Hollow neighborhood of Hartford.
But he was much older than you, right?
Yes, he was, ma'am.
So, I mean, did you have friends?
Well, the types of friends that I had were you know, were people that were involved in the same type of stuff that I was. I didn't really have any good positive friends or role models because of my lifestyle, the way that I was living. Anybody that you know, that was living decent, you know, decent lives just didn't want anything to do with me. And you know, I didn't understand it then, but I understand it now.
Yeah. Okay. And your other co-defendant is your brother?
No.
No.
Well,
Is there any relation? Who's Wilfredo?
Oh no, Wilfredo, yeah, that's my younger brother. But
Okay. He was involved, was he not?
no, he wasn't.
He wasn't involved in any of your crimes?
No, he wasn't involved in any of them.
He was. He was the driver.
The case was dropped.
No, that case was dropped. When I got arrested, I implicated my younger brother Wilfredo in the shooting in the Elizabeth Park. I did it because I was upset at him. I wasn't thinking straight, and you know, I was so out of it with all the drugs that I was doing that I wasn't really in my right frame of mind. So, you know, after my mind cleared up, I realized what I had done. And when the detectives came to talk to me, I told them that he had nothing to do with it. So it was just
Okay,
me
so
and
who was the
Papo.
third person with you then in some of these cases?
And for the sexual assault, it was one of Papo's friends. I honestly didn't know who that person was. The only thing I know about him was that his name was Kachan.
Did you tell the police that? I didn't see that anywhere in the reports.
I believe I did.
What,
I
wait,
believe,
what did you think his name was?
I believe his name, his nickname was Kachan.
Okay.
Kachan.
Was he charged?
I don't think they ever I don't know whatever happened with that individual. Ma'am, with all
I
due
couldn't find any
respect.
information.
Yeah, no, but there was one third person, and I don't think he was charged with that. I don't think they were ever able to locate him and arrest him.
Oof. Well, that's even scarier.
I
Really,
don't know
that
where.
there's someone out there committing these heinous offenses who is not held responsible. And I would blame you partially for that. Because you should have tried harder maybe to help them find this person.
I didn't know who this person was. This was a friend of Papo's. That was the very
Right.
first time that I ever met that person, was that
Yeah.
night.
Well, but really,
Before
how
that-
could you implicate someone else if you weren't taking responsibility yourself, right? You're not going to help them find somebody else. All right. I think I'm going to let my colleagues ask you some questions now. Thank you for speaking with me, Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And the chair has covered quite a bit of information with you, Mr. Estremera. Estremera?
Yes, sir.
But just for me, just a couple of things. I'll be honest with you. The person that I read about obviously is not the person sitting in front of us today. The different person sitting in front of us today. That doesn't take away from all of the craziness of this particular event and these offenses, which are absolutely horrendous in this. The thought of someone breaking into someone's house, holding them hostage, sexually assaulting the daughter. I mean, just that whole scene, it's hard to even imagine an image of. What's going to be, you've been in for 37 years. What's your plan if for some reason you do get released? What's your plan on the outside? The world is very different outside today.
Well, my plan would be to get my parole transferred to Puerto Rico.
I heard that. I heard that early on, but I'm more concerned about, what's your life going to look like? Work, those kinds of things. Work, family relationships.
Yes. My uncle, he has a 15-acre farm in Puerto Rico, and my plans are, if I'm granted parole, to transfer to Puerto Rico, and I will be managing his farm. So in essence, I'm going to go back to what I had learned when I was there with my grandfather. I'm going to become a jibarito. I'm going to become a farmer.
Okay.
I'll be
So,
taking, okay.
no, go ahead. So you're going to become a farmer. That's what you said.
Yes, sir. I'll become a farmer.
And how about family relationships other than this uncle?
Well, all of my support, the majority of my support system is on my mother's side. And I'm fortunate that they're still alive. The only people that I don't have is my grandfather, who passed away, and my grandmother. But other than that, everybody else is still alive, and they're all just waiting and anxious to support me in any way, in every way that they possibly can. So I do have a positive support system waiting for me. And I have work waiting for me. I have a home waiting for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I also reviewed some of your videos from prior hearings that you had. I'll be honest with you, from 23 to now, I'm not hearing very much of a difference in terms of things that you might have gotten and gathered. And part of your denial for discretionary parole last time was related around you not having figured out what were some of the driving. What happened?
No.
Oh, what were some of the driving things that that you learn from all these things that will change you coming out.
Well,
And I'm still not hearing a lot of that now.
Well, what it is I put all my attentions in studying in college. And that's been my main thing is to, you know, I made it a mission to I understand that you know, that the education is going to be a main and important thing in my life. So I put all my energies and everything that I had in order to get my education. And so that's what I put 100% of my effort in. And I'm thankful that I did. You know, today I stand before you. I'm a college graduate. I got my high school diploma.
It's a major accomplishment from where you came from. I read that.
Yes. So from the time period that you're talking about, all those years until recently, until this year when I graduated, that's what I've been doing. I've been taking college courses and studying to get that. I've been taking courses in theology, and that's something that, you know, that I'm considering also getting a degree in. And so, and besides that, just basically just mentoring and tutoring people in the dorm.
Okay. Well, thank you for answering that. I mean, I just want you to know my concern at this point is I'm still not hearing the change that I wanted to hear from the last time I saw your video and heard what you had to say at that point. I'm not hearing the same things basically that I heard then. But I don't have any additional questions, but thank you for answering the questions I did have.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Rodriguez. Ms. Berry?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Not good.
Yes, sir. Guys, I'm going to ask the attorney once more.
We can't, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear anything that you just said.
So I'm going to ask you once more, Attorney Murphy, Walker, to please stop. Please don't coach the Mr. ESTREMERA while we're asking him the questions. I know that you want to help him in any way that you can, but again, the chair did say this is not your full hearing. It is his, so we response to come from him.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
I don't know if you people are aware, but I have anxiety issues where it's sometimes when I get nervous, it's hard for me to express myself the way that I know I should be expressing myself.
You're doing a good job expressing yourself.
Yeah, I think you're doing fine. You're answering our
Yeah.
questions just fine, but we need to know that they're your words,
Yeah.
your thoughts, you know?
I understand.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate that statement as well, Mr. ESTREMERA.
So we spoke at the beginning of your hearing about your childhood and how that was very instrumental in the behaviors or the crimes that you committed out in the community. That's right?
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm going to take you back to this day in 1990 when you entered into these people's homes, you know, with children that were there. How do you think that their childhoods were growing up, knowing that the place where they should be safest and feel the safest, that safety was taken away. It was robbed from them, you know, and just imagine if they couldn't afford to move someplace else. Every day they had to come back to that house and live in that room where that young girl's innocence was taken.
The shame that I understand what you're saying, and you're absolutely right. You know, just thinking about my own family and thinking about how I would feel if somebody, you know, committed a crime like that and hurt them in the way that I hurt these families, it just makes me so sad. It just destroys me to think that I was capable of doing such a horrendous thing. And to think about somebody doing something like that to my family, it's just,
Yeah, it's horrific, right? So you can really understand the victim's position in this. Like, this is not something that, just like you live with all your childhood trauma, these people live with that trauma as well. And earlier, your attorney said that charges were dropped when the chair was questioning you about, I think, another robbery that you committed. And I would argue that although the cases were dropped, that does not negate the fact that the crime was committed, you know, and that you were involved. In fact, there was another case where something very similar happened between you and a young lady. And I think that you said that she was a prostitute, if I'm not mistaken, but you were accused of robbing and sexually assaulting her as well. Is that right?
if memory serves me right, I think I was like 16 years old at the time, and I was on my way to this restaurant called the Chicken Coop.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was solicited. There was, there was a bunch of prostitutes that were hanging around in that area there, and I was solicited by that one lady, and you know.
Right, but you did because you weren't satisfied with the service. You took the money back, and so she called the police. Is that what happened?
If I remember, I believe that's what happened.
All right. So let's go a little bit further. Prior to your being charged with these offenses that you're currently serving time for, you committed a number of very similar crimes. And you said to the chair, yes, I was robbing, and that was the way that you made your living. So do you think that it's fair to say that because of all the things that you had done that you were not convicted for, that the sentence that you're currently serving, you were absolutely a menace in the past? There is no argument. But I mean, I really do feel like you've got a break somehow in because of all the crimes that you were committing, this one finally caught up to you, you know, and you received a sentence that could go up to life, you know. So I know that this is not your first time asking for some relief of your sentence. And I spoke to you previously. I was on a hearing with you with some other people. And I think I told you at that time that I really did hear the change, and I did applaud you on the work that you've done. But in some cases, you know, it's really difficult to not know all the things that you've done in the past and say, okay, you know, just let's give them an opportunity out in the community. It's very difficult to.
Ms. Barry, there's.
Yes, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry.
Still coaching? Okay. I do commend you. Again, you've done lots of work there. We received the letters. You've continued to try to do your very best while you've been in there. And I am just, with so many victims, so many people impacted by the things that you've done forever and ever, you know, it's very difficult to say that your desires to be released from prison outweigh the trauma that they've experienced and the trauma that they will continue to have because of the things that you've done. You know, and I'm not saying that you haven't done good things, because you haven't. It's just difficult. And I'm sure you can understand our position. When the chair asked you about what do you think a fair sentence is, you said your sentence was fair.
I mean, what was I supposed to say? I mean,
you were supposed to say what you felt was a fair sentence.
Yeah.
But what is a fair sentence for all the things that you've done?
We,
And let's talk a bit about these co-defendants, because I did see, I can't say the name, but like you said, it's Chachan. Have you ever seen your co-defendants in the prisons?
ma'am, I haven't seen them. For all I know, they're probably not even alive. We're talking almost 50 years ago.
Have you heard any updates about how your victims are doing or how they're coping?
There's no way for me to be able to reach out to any of my
No,
victims.
not to reach out, but I mean, if you.
Do I wonder,
Hearings,
do I wonder how they're living, what their lives have, what they've done with their lives, how, the impact of the things that I've done to them, how that's affected them and their children. Absolutely, I think about that. I reflect about that all the time. Whenever I'm having conversations with some of the young people that I'm mentoring, I often use that as an example. That because of my behavior, because of the things that I did.
Yeah, the choices that you made.
Because of the
That's why
choices
you
that I
are.
exactly because of the choices that I made, these families have gone through an extreme amount of unnecessary pain, and I feel for them, and I pray for them every single day that they it comes to a point where they can find peace. I pray so much for that. More than I pray for my own self, I pray for them.
That's good. Okay. And you said that one of the reasons why you want to be released is because your mom is ailing.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have siblings?
Yes, I have two siblings. I have one that I don't have any contact with, and then I have another one who lives in Puerto Rico. But he's
Why aren't
also
they taking care of your mom?
well. He's also his health is not that well either. He's got some health issues of his own.
That was it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, thank you very much. At this point, we'll ask the Office of Victim Services to facilitate any input that they have. Ms. Vasquez, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Chair and board members. Good afternoon. We have two victims that are connected via Teams in a conference call, and they wish to address the board. Then after they are done addressing the board, I will read two statements that I have.
Thank you.
This is an opportunity for you to express to the board your wishes and concerns. At this time, please unmute your microphone by pressing *6. You may turn on your video camera if you wish, and you may begin.
Okay, I assume you're talking to me, Nina. This is Tim.
Yes, Tim, thank you.
Okay. So I've put a document in front of my screen, so I can't see you now. So my name is Timothy Wilson. I live in Surrey, Connecticut. I'm the brother of the rape victim. So I'm going to thank the victim services, Nina, and particularly the state's attorney's office and this panel for allowing me to provide my perspective on this matter. So this is difficult. I'll never, ever forget where I was that midwinter day when I got a call from my mother to tell me about the heinous crimes that my family had endured at the hands of this man. I was in my college bedroom doing homework, 800 miles away from my home, when my mom, crying, scared, and sounding helpless, told me the terrible news about what that man and his two accomplices had done. She told me how he forced his way in as she returned home. He and his gang were brandishing guns, threatened to kill her, threatened to kill my father and my youngest sister. For years after, I was traumatized at the news. I imagined and reimagined over and over that nightmarish scene. My youngest sister doing homework, deaf, profoundly deaf, not able to hear that they had come in. My mom running toward the room to protect her. Too late. She's terrorized my sister. She's terrorized, thinking she was to be killed, thinking her parents might be killed. Who knows? These men, including Daniel ESTREMERA, were vicious, mean, and scary. Holding a gun, Mr. ESTREMERA and his buddies tied up my scared, helpless father. Then my mother was tied up, and then they tied up my little, profoundly deaf sister. She was only 15. He and his gang ransacked the house, tore apart closets, drawers, cabinets, looking for money. Money. They even cut the phone lines, as I understand it. My family was sure they were going to be killed. He figured finding a few bucks was worth terrorizing and threatening to kill a family. This horror continued for, I'm told, an hour and a half until the doorbell rang. You see, they had locked the doors. They locked my family in. When the door was open, the daughter, another sister, a beautiful, smart, popular, caring 16-year-old teenager, walked into the house after doing some fun with some friends, and looked down the hall where she saw one man standing with a shotgun. She thought everyone had been killed. She didn't know where anyone was, but the worst hadn't happened yet. She ran to the kitchen to hide. They found her, took her from the kitchen, and forced her into the bedroom, happened to be my bedroom, next to where my tied-up parents, the bedroom adjacent to where my tied-up parents and my sister were held. They demanded she take off her clothes, and then they tied her hands. One man would hold the gun on my parents while ESTREMERA and the others, one after the other, took turns and violently raped her. Imagine if that happened to you at your house, to your family, to your daughter. For years and years, I imagined just that. I imagined what it must have been like to have been my father and my mother, not just fearing for their own lives, but knowing that their precious young daughter was being raped only feet away, yet they couldn't stop it. I imagined the muted screams, her feet and hands banging on the floor as she was repeatedly raped. I imagined the terror they all felt, the helplessness. After I became a dad and had my own children, I would think back to that night and feel the anger, fear, sadness, and trauma build up inside of me. I imagined what it would be like to be a father, to be there helpless while my child is brutalized. After all these years, I continue to literally feel sick to my stomach every time I think of it. Imagine just for a moment what it must have been like to be my sisters, or my poor mom, or my poor dad. God bless their souls. They've passed away now. I know he was not quite 21 when he committed this crime. But I also know that you don't have to be 21 to know that invading a private home is wrong, that tying up people at gunpoint is wrong, that raping a young girl is wrong. He did it all. He knew it was wrong, but he did it anyway. Eventually, the invaders left, yet the effects of that night were just starting. The trauma came and came and came and came. Both sisters needed many years of counseling, changing schools, and were afraid of his coming back. My youngest sister, the deaf one, also needed years of counseling. My mother had to use sign language and translate both sides of the sessions, reliving the terror she endured week after week after week. She had to be in the room with the therapist. My father withdrew. He wouldn't go to much counseling. Men of his generation, the quote, greatest generation, they didn't need counseling. But yet he withdrew, largely keeping to himself, couldn't even come to my college graduation. He always looked sad and quiet after that, it seemed to me. I'm getting close. The tragedy of that nightmare hasn't gone away. Even today, my nerves are very raw writing this statement. So do I fear his being released? You bet I do. I do. For many years after he invaded our house, he was on the run from the law, as I understand it. I understand that he escaped from jail and committed murder. Who's to say what he might do if he's released? Why should we live in fear? He should be the one to live in fear, not us. He must pay for these heinous crimes and complete his full sentence. It's a life sentence. By staying in prison, he is a danger to society and will remain so. For the sake of society, my family, and especially my sister, please deny parole. This man belongs behind bars. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. We
Welcome.
also
What?
have the victim of the rape on the line. I am not sure if she would like to say something. This will be the opportunity, and you can unmute by pressing *6.
Hello. I'm assuming you can hear me.
Yes.
Thanks, Tim. That was impacted me. It's been a long time since this has happened, and fortunately, I've had a wonderful life with a loving husband and 2 amazing children. I'm proud of everything that I've accomplished, despite the horror that happened to me in my own home, in my brother's room at 16 years old. While my family was tied up in the other room. To be honest, I thought they were dead. They ransacked my house. I looked in the side window of the door. I thought my mom was cleaning. That's where my mind was. My mind wasn't that there were terrible people holding my family hostage for money, Anyways, when this first happened, I did get a little bit of relief when they caught them, because it wasn't just Daniel. He had 2 other people with him. But then what did they do? They escaped from jail, taking no responsibility for the evil actions and all the torment and would have had to live with since. The level of fear and anxiety that caused was immeasurable. They knew where I lived. We couldn't move. Like someone said earlier, we didn't have money to move. I had to live in that house, from home by myself, get up the gumption to come in the front door every time, not knowing what was going to happen there. There are many instances where things were out of place or whatever, and I would just sit in my bed with a knife, ready to attack the person, because it was so real that someone could be there again, or they'd be back. This is hard to do. How does someone sleep and carry on a normal life in a house where you were traumatized? You really can't. Sometimes I think it's been a long time, and is it enough time? But then I think about it. There's zero opportunity for me and my family to get parole. I can't get from what happened, so I don't think he should either. I think he should have his whole sentence. I've got a life sentence, 100%. I'm still impacted today because I need to keep secrets, as it would be too painful for me to share with some of my family members what happened. I don't want the people that I love to be punished, as I have all these years with knowing that someone could commit such evil, heinous crimes on a teenager in her own home. I don't want the change of reality that they forced upon me, that's what the world is. So it doesn't end. You think maybe after all these years, he'd help to find the others too. He had names, he could have helped, but no. Just as he broke out of jail, he didn't give his victims any thought. So, I just ask that he isn't paroled. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for your statement. Thank you, board members, for allowing me to speak today. My name is the victim's brother. Today, as I've done previously, I'd like to reiterate, as I did 10 years ago in front of this parole board, that our family members are still dealing with those painful memories of that night in January of 1980, now 45 years ago. It's as though this incident took place just yesterday. I still visualize the hurtful images of my two sisters and parents and their looks of anger and helplessness that night. Those images never go away. The despicable act that was done to my sister by Mr. ESTREMERA, inmate number 078169, continues to this day to make me very emotional, hurtful, and extremely angry. The only solitude that our family and I continue to hope for from Mr. ESTREMERA's incarceration is knowing that he will continue to pay for what he did to my sister, our family, and all the other families that he's impacted before and after that night of January 1980. The price he must pay for his actions is for Mr. ESTREMERA to continue to remain in prison for the rest of his life. With our current legal system, this is the only way to ensure no other family has to endure the pain, suffering, and lasting effects that my sister and family has had to endure for the past 45 years. As I stated previously in my letters to the parole board, Mr. ESTREMERA is a convicted, hardened criminal. Looking at the violent acts he was involved in with our family, with other local families, and his various encounters with law enforcement, his crimes have impacted forever the lives of families and loved ones. Therefore, it continues to be my position that Mr. ESTREMERA, inmate number 078169, should remain incarcerated, and I ask then that this parole be denied. Thank you, Peter Boyson. Now I'm going to read a statement from the family of Philippe Ashling.
Thank you.
Our mother is now 90 years old. She can no longer see or hear, and each passing year has been filled with heartache and loss. We lost another sister just last year, and the weight of our family's pain has only grown with time. So many years have passed since Daniel ESTREMERA made the choice that shattered our lives. Yet the emotional wounds remain. We have carried this burden long enough. At this point, we trust the board members to make the right decision they feel is just. All we ask is that we not be asked to return to another hearing and continue to relive the trauma that has already taken so much from us. Thank you, board members. This is all that I have for this case.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, each of the attorneys will be afforded an opportunity to make a statement. We'll begin with State's Attorney Wolcott. Do you have any comments or statements you'd like to make? You may proceed.
Yes, thank you, members of the board, Chair Zaccanini and commission members. Many of the questions that were circling in my mind, the chair asked about, the members asked about, and it's contained in this packet. So, and the victim statement, there's just so much content and context there. But there's just a few things that I would like to highlight for the board. First and foremost, I just want to point out that, you know, as we sit through these hearings, we often hear about drugs and alcohol and substance abuse being the motivator for these crimes. But not every substance abuser has the violent history that Mr. ESTREMERA has. Not every person that drinks alcohol goes out and engages in these types of activities. And what we're looking at is a path of terror that started in September of 1979. That robbery, first degree with a firearm. Yeah, 2 firearms were taken, jewelry, 13 pounds of marijuana, and that crime was reported. That wasn't somebody knocking on the door and saying, please hand over, you know, the 2 firearms, any jewelry, and maybe the little amounts of marijuana you have in your house. It's an extremely violent event. It's going into another individual's home. And no matter what they're engaged in, it's terrifying. Now, should they have had 13 pounds of marijuana in their home? Possibly were they involved in the actions of drug dealing? Yes. But Mr. ESTREMERA has to take accountability for his actions. He's the brazen individual bursting through that door with firearms. So that's in September. We then get to December 1979, and it's the murder and the commission of a felony, and that's a felony murder conviction. And he's at the police department being questioned for one incident, and then they find evidence of his presence at the scene. That's what sets him apart. There's evidence connecting him to that murder. With his co-defendant, he gives a statement saying, well, this is who committed the crime with me. But once he flees, that statement, the state would have difficulty using that statement. And he's also, and I don't say this disparagingly, but just say because it what it is. He's also a liar. He said that his brother was there, and then says, well, his brother wasn't there. He was just angry with the brother and threw him into it. So it really brings his credibility into question, and that would present a challenge for the state and looking for a conviction. So we have ESTREMERA present at the robbery. We have evidence of his presence at the murder. And then we go into the burglary, January 30th, a mere 1 month later. And that again is invading a person's home. We've heard from their two parents present, 4 kids, one violently sexually assaulted, and she still has the impact from that. Rightfully so. It's amazingly traumatic. Even if we just broke out the burglary or just broke out the sexual assault, what Mr. ESTREMERA engaged in is a pattern of behavior that is beyond substance abuse and peer pressure. Every youth in Hartford that goes through substance abuse and peer pressure does not go on to rape, kill, and invade. And to say that those are just logical flowing consequences is disrespectful to the youth in Hartford who do have challenges, who are overcoming, and who are not engaging in this horrific stream of violent behavior. Now, at the same time, I do, of course, want to acknowledge that Mr. ESTREMERA has done some very good things here. He does recognize his crimes. He does carry this amount of shame. I think he said the shame keeps him from too much contact with his daughter because he doesn't want to impact her. And that really brings up just the generational trauma of his crimes and his crime spree, not just for his family, him and his family, but for the victims. And we've heard from 2 families of victims here. And when you count, we're talking about 2 families of victims, 8 people at the scene, and then countless children. And so it's just very difficult, even looking at the things that he's done, the treatment, his employment history. He's been tasked with working for officers at DOC. That is wonderful, and it's a wonderful way for him to spend his time. So he has employment, he has education, he's gone through a sex offender treatment. He has gone through other programs, he's mentoring others, he's helping out, and it's a wonderful way to use his time. And we should be looking at a different person. Over the course of 36 years, a person should change. The sad part is 36 years, these victims have had to carry the trauma and try to mitigate that trauma from impacting their children. So with that, I thank the board for its time and for allowing me to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Wolcott. Now, Attorney Walker, if you have any final remarks you may like to make, you may do so now.
Thank you very much. I first want to apologize. I definitely did not mean to interfere with the proceedings. I just want to say that the person that you see here today, Mr. ESTREMERA, is not the person I know. His fear and anxiety is clearly paralyzing to him, and his mind goes blank. So you're not getting the full impression of who this man actually is today, unfortunately. A couple other points before I give my prepared remarks. The robbery case, I didn't say was dropped. What I said was his sentence was served. That's my fault. That should not be imputed to Mr. ESTREMERA, because I was under the impression that it's the felony murder and the burglary and the sexual assault case that were at issue here. And one other thing, The 2023 parole hearing was not obviously a 23-169 hearing. It was a regular adult parole hearing.
Correct.
Okay, so with all those preliminary points, I just want to say that I am grateful for the opportunity to be here today to advocate for this man who I have come to regard as a friend. He is exactly the person that this type of hearing was meant for, and he is the reason why I advocated so ardently for the passage of this bill. Before I begin, I want to make something absolutely clear. My words of support for Danny are not meant to minimize or disregard the harm that he caused to any of his victims or the ripple effect that was caused by his crimes. I know what he did when he was 19 years old. He was a kid, and I call him a kid because that's what the scientific research and our own legislature tell us, that at 19 years old, the human brain is still very much under construction. At the time that Danny committed his crimes, his decision-making abilities, his impulse control, emotional regulation, and susceptibility to peer pressure were not those of a mature adult. It's not an excuse. It's just context that's relevant for why we're here today. Today, nearly 46 years later, we aren't here to relitigate the crimes. We are here to assess who Daniel ESTREMERA is now, a man approaching 65 years old, and whether the rehabilitation and the transformation of the past 4 decades demonstrate a readiness for parole. I first met Danny in August of 2018 when I was assigned to his habeas case at another firm. And to be quite candid, my expectations were not high. Like you, I read everything that he had done, and the rap sheet is long. But what I came to realize, obviously, is much of what is on that rap sheet. Again, he was a child. So I look at his record, I see that his habeas is untimely, and I go into that first meeting in August of 2018, fully intending to have him withdraw his habeas case. What I found instead was a kind, humble, deeply self-aware man. He took full responsibility for his past, and he spoke openly about how he had changed. Not overnight, of course, but through many years of deliberate work. I walked in that meeting ready to end the case, and I walked out determined to find a way to help this man. Over the last 8 years, I have literally spent hundreds of hours meeting with him. And almost every meeting was filled with tears as he expressed his profound shame and remorse for his crimes over and over again. I've represented Danny in court proceedings. I've advocated for legislative change, and I have devoted hundreds of pro bono hours to ensure that his case and those of others like him receive fair consideration under our law. I didn't do that for gratitude or recognition. I did it because I believe in evidence-based rehabilitation, and Daniel ESTREMERA exemplifies that concept. That belief in particular inspired me to advocate for the bill that became Public Act 23-169, which legislation, as you know, was designed to ensure that people who committed crimes as youths are not forever defined by their worst moments. Danny's journey was one of the reasons I worked for this bill's passage. This very hearing under 54-125A sub G was not originally granted to Danny ESTREMERA by the Board of Pardons and Paroles. It exists because I filed a habeas petition challenging the denial of the hearings for individuals serving indeterminate sentences. A judge and an assistant attorney general agreed that Danny qualified for the hearing under Public Act 23-169. And it's further my understanding that the BOPP, upon learning of this, and under advice of their own attorney decided to hear these people, who were also kids at the time of their offenses, and to grant them hearings under the Act. Turning to why we're here. Mr. ESTREMERA is 64 years old, and he has spent over 37 years in prison. When he was arrested, he was illiterate. He's now a college graduate. When he was arrested, he was the product of a toxic, abusive home life. And contrary to what Attorney Wolcott said, we're not just talking about peer pressure and drug abuse. I know the panel members have read fully my submission and also that of Dr. Pierce that outlined everything that this man has lived through. And that adds up to further complications when we talk about brain development. I know this panel knows that. So this man, a product of a toxic, abusive home life, and with his impulsive and unregulated behavior, these are the hallmarks of adolescent brain development, as the neuroscience clearly shows us. But with time, education, and dedication, Danny has rewired how he thinks and lives. He has no violent infractions over the last 3 decades. He's held positions of trust, and he's mentored others. The brain science tells us that meaningful change is not only possible, it's probable for those who have spent decades doing the work. And Danny ESTREMERA has done the work. Public Act 23-169 was designed for individuals like Danny ESTREMERA, those who committed serious crimes as youth, but who have matured, changed, and now pose no public safety threat. The statute does not demand that we forget what happened. Certainly Danny cannot forget. Every day he lives with the shame and remorse of his actions. What the statute does ask us to assess is who he is now. Who is the man that stands before you today? This person is not the same young man who entered the system in 1988. He is not just ready for release. He is a candidate who embodies the very purpose of this law. As I said earlier, when he entered prison, he was illiterate with no appreciable skills. Now, college graduate, having completed also a degree in business administration and vocational programs in building maintenance, business management, and graphic communications, all while living with untreated ADHD. He has not only avoided trouble, but he has modeled stability and peace within the Department of Correction. In nearly 4 decades, he's received 1 disciplinary ticket for cigarettes. That record is extraordinary. It shows that he has learned to navigate one of the most stressful and volatile environments in the world with patience, humility, and self-control. And he has become a mentor to other youths within the prison, helping young men find the same path forward toward accountability and transformation that he found. Dozens of current and former inmates have written letters, as Chair Zaccanini mentioned, describing him as a father figure, a teacher, and a moral compass inside the walls. This is not the same man who was sentenced in 1988. The terror described at his sentencing no longer exists. What remains is a man who has confronted the roots of his behavior, his trauma, his neglect, and early exposure to violence. And he turned that pain into purpose. The neuropsychological evaluation that Dr. Pierre prepared for this hearing concluded, and I quote, "The factors that contributed to Mr. ESTREMERA's criminal acts have been addressed and ameliorated during his incarceration. And the results unequivocally support the conclusion that Mr. ESTREMERA currently possesses the necessary personal, psychological, psychosocial, intellectual, and cognitive abilities to function successfully, adaptively, and law-abidingly in the community." That is not a statement of hope. That is a statement of fact, grounded in data and science. As I said, Danny's story is precisely what Public Act 23-169 was designed for. To ensure that those who have demonstrated genuine rehabilitation and transformation are given a meaningful opportunity for release. Danny's crimes will always be horrific. The pain they caused cannot be undone. But his decades of accountability, education, and service show that vengeance is no longer necessary to serve justice. He has already changed countless lives within the walls of prison, including his own. Imagine what he could do outside of them, mentoring youths, helping others avoid the path he once took, and proving by example that redemption is possible. I therefore urge the board to see Mr. ESTREMERA not only for what he once did, but for who he has become. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. ESTREMERA, the panel's gonna enter into deliberation to discuss your case, and we'll give you our decision shortly, okay? Okay. So for me, it is very clear that Mr. ESTREMERA has shown some change, that he has demonstrated rehabilitation throughout the years. How could he not? I mean, he's 65 years old. He was 18, 19 when he committed these offenses. Yeah, I think there is a reasonable probability that he could live in society without breaking the law. However, I'm not sure that his release outweighs, for society's purposes, his continued incarceration. There are just so many victims, and these crimes are just so much to overcome. It's been 37 years. We all know life in prison today is 6 years. I'm just not there yet. And I know he tried to express himself, had some difficulty, but
and I think the victims clearly expressed the continued trauma is still.
well, it is. I mean,
this point.
I went back and just trying to find all of this
Yeah.
information and review all of the previous hearings. It's been a lot.
Yeah.
It's been a lot. And learning today that others weren't held accountable, and partly because he escaped. That's so scary. Like, I just can't imagine that. For me, it's a denial today. It's just a matter of, if we want to rehear the case. Of course, I heard the victim statement saying that they don't want to keep doing this. They don't want to rehear the case, but yeah, really is. Mr. Rodriguez, your thoughts?
Very challenging case we have. It's weighed against the good that he's done in prison, because he has done some good things in prison, and this immense trauma to this family.
Yeah.
Both families, really, but the family where the home invasion took place, just too much for me. I'm a denial today as well.
Okay.
I might consider a rehearing 5 years from now, maybe, but
Thank you.
let's see if there's any more change.
Thank you, Mr.
But I don't want to bring up victims to that either, which is the other problem with this, putting
It
the
is.
two all over again.
What are your thoughts, Ms. Barry?
I think that I spelled it out to, Mr. ESTREMERA. It's very difficult to reconcile the magnitude or the impact that this crime has had on these victims in our society as a whole. I mean,
Yeah.
laws were changed because of home invasions.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot support parole today either.
Okay.
The nature and circumstance of this crime was like, it will
Never change, right?
It doesn't, thinking the fact.
What are your thoughts on rehearing the case?
I'm not interested in rehearing the case. I would encourage him to keep, doing the positive things, and an administrative review would be warranted.
Yeah, administrative review, that's what I would think too.
An administrative review? All right, in the matter of Daniel ESTREMERA, inmate number 78169, I'll move to deny parole due to the nature and circumstance of the offenses and injury and impact to the victim and the victim's families. I'll note for the record, myself, Chair Zaccanini was willing to rehear the case. However, the majority is not. So in accordance with board policy, the case will be, there will be no new parole hearing. The case will be reviewed administratively in 5 years to determine whether there is enough new mitigating information to warrant another parole hearing. Is there a second for motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Been denied, Mr. ESTREMERA. We want to thank everyone for their participation here today.
Thank you all. This is the Public Act 23-169 hearing for Daniel ESTREMERA and date number 078169, and it is 12:09 p.m.
Who else is surprised that they denied? And you know what this means is that in 5 years they will review
Thank you
it
for your time.
administratively. They go over the notes and they'll say, has enough changed that we should give him another parole hearing? And you know that means the door isn't completely shut for him, and it's not shut for the victims either. But at least there's a 5-year breathing period where the victims can mentally not have the stress of, oh my gosh, am I going to get an email in 2 years that I need to do this again? And there is a chance that maybe in 5 years they say, nope, we haven't seen enough, go another 5 years. But we meet one of the attorneys that had a lot to do with that legislation that was passed, Act 23-169. Now we see the face behind it, and what a no, you know, you would think someone with so much expertise might have a little bit more professionalism or expertise than to be whispering under her breath to him every other word, actually to get admonished by the parole board. It's not surprising though. You know, she stands up there and lobbies on behalf of when she dare calls a man at 19, a man at 19, you are a man. No matter how much legislation you pass, no matter how many laws are written, you are not going to change the fact that he is a full grown man at 19 committing these horrible crimes, these unspeakable crimes. And yet she calls him a child. You know, in Connecticut, they're still trying to get legislation to pass that anyone under the age of 26 should be considered a child. Why not? If they use the logic under 21, the brain is not fully developed until 26 either. So they're going to keep trying. Think about the monsters that will now become parole eligible if she were to have her way. I'm assuming she's lobbying for that. I don't know. I'm just assuming it. I'm taking a guess, a gander. She's so proud of herself. I passed this legislation. It's like you can't go both ways. You can't listen to the victims and tell them, don't worry about you. Don't worry about it. Look how much she's changed. And then you hear in this hearing that they never caught the third person. I mean, that's just straight up. Until you are willing to tell us who that person is, you should like no. You believe for a second he doesn't know who that third person is? No way. I don't buy that for one bloody second. This person's criminal jacket in the short time that he had been around is longer is so long and so and then there's smoke, there's fire. You hear about the incident with the prostitute, and it really you just this guy was a wrecking machine, a wrecking ball, and he downplayed everything. He downplays the way that he was talking about it. I'm listening to it, and I thought the way that he was talking about it first, that he was just involved in the crime, but he had nothing to do with violently essaying the 16-year-old child who we called a young lady. And then he goes on to say, and I joined in. I did it. And it's like, I just don't. I don't buy it. That's not how it went down. And like, even if that's how it went, like the way that he again spoke about it is all about belittling. Even with the way he described the murder, it was like, I was so afraid. I went up there. Oh, he took my gun, and it's like, You know, I wish I had more information on this case. The problem is you search these names and it's a popular name, so everything crimes in recent history pop up, but nothing about his crime. It was so long ago. Yeah, 1980. How long did he escape for? I see the sentencing date 1989. I can't recall how long he was on the run for. But I also, did you notice he had that tissue wrapped up and he kept wiping his eyes with it? But I looked, I was staring at that tissue. If you just want to scroll back, there was no wetness on the tissue. The texture of the tissue did not change. I don't believe he shed a single tear. He was wiping his eyes, but there was no liquid. There was nothing there. I didn't see it. Like a tissue, it would become wet, it would change, nothing. The same, it was the same thing. And he tried to minimize. And you know what? It does make me wonder. This attorney's been with them for so long. And it's like, how do you it seemingly in my like come so unprepared to a parole hearing? It did seem that way. He came in like with a certain script and story he would tell, but the second they started poking around, it's like he needed her to whisper in his ear. How embarrassing. And we've seen thousands of parole hearings. I think we've seen an attorney whisper into their client's ear maybe less than 5 times that I can remember off the top of my head. I think I remember 2 times, one out of Louisiana and one in Connecticut. But they don't do that because they know you're not supposed to. It looks bad. I love that they admonish her for it. My microphone. It's like the settings got messed up, and I know the sound quality is not good anymore. I have no idea how to fix it, guys. I'm sorry. But it just is. There's nothing to say. Like the victim said it best, the brother said it really best. When I was listening to this, you just can't imagine. You don't want to imagine. But and the brother wasn't there. The brother just, he had his how he again, I can't. Even the little detail of his mother having to do therapy for his sister. So the mother had to be in the room to be the translator. So she had to relive it every time her sister did therapy because she had to do the sign language with the therapist and be the in between, the translator. I you can't. It just absolutely destroy as a parent, you would never recover. You would never, ever, ever the rage, the absolute rage that you would live in, having these 3 monsters do that to your daughter who is feet from you. I cannot you just don't wish that upon your worst enemy. You just wouldn't. And then you see this smug, defense attorney. He was the baby. He was the child. It's like, how dare you? Well, there you have it. And with that, I'll let you go.
He wouldn't go to much counseling. Men of his generation, the quote, greatest generation, they didn't need counseling. But yet he withdrew, largely keeping to himself, couldn't even come to my college graduation. He always looked sad and quiet after that, it seemed to me. I'm getting close. The tragedy of that nightmare hasn't gone away. Even today, my nerves are very raw writing this statement. So do I fear his being released? You bet I do. I do. For many years after he invaded our house, he was on the run from the law, as I understand it. I understand that he escaped from jail and committed murder. Who's to say what he might do if he's released? Why should we live in fear? He should be the one to live in fear, not us.